have is also now they're citing Elon Musk as coming from Bern, Switzerland. So Bern, Switzerland is a key to this whole thing, and a lot of light is now being shed on Switzerland. That's interesting to me also, discovering, since we have a castle, the family has a castle still, the Trakel Castle, my mom's maiden name, in Switzerland. That's where this comes for the Matrix. The Wachowskis didn't have this. You have to come from this world. That's why it's so different. Because I had to learn not only to lucid dream to escape the nightmares, that if I called out, I get a beating. So I had to contain everything. And there's 3 adjunct professors or visiting professors from California that are doing this 1980 computer class. And it was so, that's why the green scrolling blips, I put them in this original story that Warner Bros. Got so excited about, is because I was so sick of those green scrolling blips on the DOS program. It was so simple and so stupid, I thought. And so I went in and I talked to the professors, and the first thing out of their mouth, the one head guy, was, you haven't attended any classes. You're going to fail. There's no way. So why are you here? I said, well, I have an idea I wanted to share with you, and I'll go. So I talked about Windows. I talked about having, this is 1980, I talked about having where you can expound from a central learning center.
As we journey through life on Earth, our challenges transcend physical foe and human conflict. Our struggles are not merely against flesh and blood. The holy are armed with the divine protection of God, the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. The unholy are cloaked in darkness, aligned with the unholy Trinity, the devil, the beast, the false prophet. We are fortified by the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. They are driven by the devil, the beast, the false prophet. The man I'm about to introduce has been saved time and again by the grace and armor of God, enduring trials that would break most. His shield, the Holy Trinity. Let's first unpack the unholy Trinity he faces as a prelude to his powerful personal testimony. The devil he confronts is Hollywood, a seductive force spreading corruption and deceit. The beast manifests as rogue actors within the US intelligence agencies, who have relentlessly worked to make his life a living hell, attempting unsuccessfully to take his life while tragically succeeding in taking the lives of 2 of his sons. The false prophet takes the form of Pat Robertson's organization, the Christian Coalition, cloaking itself in righteousness while betraying its so-called sacred calling. Welcome to Power Over Pain. Today we'll be starting a multi-part series with the one and only Tom Althouse, the real scriptwriter and author of the Matrix series that the audience knows as the Matrix series. His writings and proper title is The Immortals. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Thank you for having me here, Jose. This is amazing to be able to do this together.
Wonderful. So this is going to be a multi-part series, so people get the feel of your whole life story. I know you've spread a lot of your story on the internet with other content creators, but I don't think any of them captured your whole life story from the very beginning, from your childhood all the way until now. We are going to, in this multi-part series, we're going to try and capture your whole timeline from the beginning till current events. So can you start by please telling us about your childhood? Because I think it's important for people to know that the way your mind works is very different to a normal person's brain, and how your imagination captures the work that has come through and unfortunately being stolen, with your own intellectual property being very important in molding all of today's society, right from Hollywood movies to the tech being used by tech companies like Elon Musk and what's coming up with the neural interfaces and so forth. So please take it away.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I have no regrets dealing with my childhood or any memories from it. They don't haunt me. I realized that my childhood I'm about to describe was what was needed in order to create the content that has changed the world. It had to come from a very dark place, and the skill sets that were developed through that crucible of horror were necessary in order for the creation of the work and also to stay alive from everything that was thrown against me. At a young age, we're formulating those synapses and brain functions. In my case, it was to cope with horror. And it has benefited me ever since. As a child, I had to learn to lucid dream, to escape horrors of nightmares from the abuse that I suffered during the day and night. I had to be able to think in another dimension where I was basically able to take myself out of this realm mentally while I was being beaten frequently. And so these different things I'm about to describe led to that ability as the child develops the mind at a young age to deal with his environment or her environment. I was able to develop these skill sets. Part of the horror that I went through was that I was not allowed to engage in any art. All that did was fuel my hunger for art and had to do introspection, where I turned inward to create it in my mind and store it in my mind. Music, drawings, film ideas at a very young age. Since I was not allowed to create it, I would come home from school with artwork. It'd be torn up on the doorstep. I was not allowed to create. My brother was, my older brother, not me. So that led that fueling
And
for
can you please share with us what you think may have been the catalyst for, in this case, your mum not wanting you to express your art?
the problem goes back to her childhood, where now she's very supportive. I had decided as a young child I would love her always. And now at this point in time, she's supportive. She realizes and regrets everything that happened. So I do want to put that out there. And even Roseanne Barr did a little tribute to her, saying, you have a great son. He's a genius. And she was lifting up my mom where she is now. But back then, she had explained to me when I'd gone to college, she wrote me a letter explaining why she had done what she had done. It wasn't an apology. It was more just an explanation. That's where she was at that point. And in it, she said that I had been the second born, that I looked perfect in her mind, like a doll. She said I had the features, like the blue eyes, the dimples, always smiling. And her firstborn was born weakly, like a weak countenance, and very, very jealous, very angry, very brutal. He was a lot of part of the problem of the horror of my childhood, and still is. But my mom explained that she was firstborn, her sister was secondborn, and was favored by her father and mother. And so she was going to get back at her secondborn for what she had suffered as being a firstborn and favor her firstborn. That was explained in the letter, and that's what caused all the abuse and all the horror. And basically, she was afraid I would succeed. My brother took that on and felt he could do whatever he wanted to me. So there was actually attempts in my life, things like that. Things like hitting me on the back of the neck with a chair, where he had learned from a Star Trek series that if you hit the third vertebrae, you can kill a person instantly in a human. Things like setting traps. He had a heavy board set above my bedstead with bookshelves where it would fall, and it did fall. This heavy board with a coonskin on it landed right by my neck, but just missed. So he was constantly trying to do these things. There was a competition instilled, like the bad seed, where if we had any toys, games, he would change the T's to J's on my blocks. He would take my matchboxes that were precious to me and give them to a neighbor to bang them up with hammers, and then show me later that they were accidents for their roadway they set up. My teddy bears that I had when I was young that were very special to me. It's the only thing I could confide in was my own stuffed animals. Another clue to where my mind was developing at a young age towards the Matrix story, where it's like a different world. Your teddy bears, Dottie, Blackie, Mackie, Brownie, they were very special to me. I thought that was my only outlet for communication with others as friends. So my trusted stuffed animals. So I was hoping they would come alive. Well, my brother knew this, and he called me over at a very young age. I was about 5, 6 years old, to the window of the other bedroom. And the trash truck was there, and he said, "Look outside." I thought he was being nice to me for the first time in my life at a young age, and so I went willingly, excited. And he pointed to the trash truck. It was doing the crushing sound, and he said, your stuffed animals are in there." So he wanted to see my face and reaction of having the last things I had most cherished destroyed in front of me. My mom also set up a situation where any brother at any time could call to her, and I'd be called down to a living room, the basement. I was always made to stand in the center of the floor for some reason. And in one case, my brother was told to go get my favorite toy, my younger brother. He brought down a pencil sharpener from my Aunt Pauline that was very special to me. She had sent it to me. Many gifts never made it to me. They were always just confiscated and given to the brothers and sisters. So this one had made it to me, and I cherished it. So my younger brother knew exactly where to go, brother Mark. He grabbed it, brought it down, and she had him crush it in front of me as I stood there watching, not allowed to respond. Now, what I'm giving you right now is an example of another formulation of the mind that had to occur. I had to endure it without any reaction. Otherwise, I would have a severe beating again. So, and the crushing of it and the loss would be enough if I was silent and not responding. This happened in like 3 a.m. There was an incident when I was young. My 2 brothers were waiting for me in the basement. They were woken up early. I went down and my mom was sitting in a chair. They called me down, had me stand in the center of the basement floor, and each one took turns harming me. What my older brother, I remember coming up and slapping my face. My mom had said, do to him what he did to you. Of course, I didn't do anything. I had been sleeping for school the next day. And so my other brother comes up and punches me in the stomach. I'm not allowed to show any response or have any anything. That's where this comes for the Matrix. The Wachowskis didn't have this. You have to come from this world. That's why it's so different. Because I had to learn not only to lucid dream to escape the nightmares, that if I called out, I get a beating. So I had to contain everything. And in these beating sessions in the basement, I had to not show any response at all. And so I learned to detach myself to a different place where I would no longer feel the pain, basically. And that also was a creative space where I internalized everything and learned how to create without making any marks, writings, or art that would be destroyed later, waiting to grow older.
From our research that is connected to the US Defense Department and intelligence agencies, we know that a lot of families that are connected to that sort of work are also many times influenced by the MK Ultra program. And considering your dad was a captain and you were being a victim of this very sick, unnatural behavior from your mum and your brother, do you think they may have been harmed by an MK Ultra type program to attack you from a young age?
Oh, it's very, very possible. I mean, I've thought about this before because I was definitely being conditioned, and it was like, it's the same thing that happened in Nazi Germany. And the children in Nazi Germany, the parents of the Reich were not allowed to nurture their children. They were supposed to keep them, if they cry, don't handle them, don't fondle them, don't comfort them. The state was preparing them to be good soldiers and good citizens for the Nazi Reich. And our government kind of seems to do the same thing, where it's like you're not to be nurtured. And so that means that you would turn to the state at an older age to look for your place to fit. And they illustrate this even in one of the shows they have now, Fear the Walking Dead is on. It's done by the same people that took my work. And in it, they show a boy, a teenager, who's very likable. And he has had no real affection or connection with his family. And the one character explains it, this African-American character who's very bright, explains it to the parent or to another. This is why he is now heading for the cults and these other groups and listening and acquiescing with them, is because he has never had anything to hold on to. He's always been lost. It's exactly what happened to me. And then you had Pat Robertson's organization trying to recruit me, saying you belong here and everything else. And I was to meet my family, the new family. And they use this all the time. So it's very important what you just said, because these other groups that try to latch on to take, say, intellectual property, if you've had success with it, approach always the same way. We're your family. We want to be there for you. We feel called to help you. It's always the same approach.
Well, what year were you born in?
It's on the clock in the Animatrix. It's also in the first graphic of the interrogation scene in Matrix. They put my birthday in along with the other things. 7/2/59. July 2nd, 59.
Yeah, because
I was supposed to be,
that's like 10 years after the end of World War II, where most of because this came to mind because you mentioned Nazi Germany, most of the Nazi scientists were in fact taken to the CIA under the guise of Operation Paperclip, weren't they?
Yes, they were, and also Operation Sunrise. So there's two of them that were done, and Alan Dulles of the CIA was working out of Bern, Switzerland, where my family originates from, the family line. Bern, Switzerland is where we trace it back farthest. And Bern, Switzerland is where Alan Dulles was working during World War II to recruit the Nazis to employ him with the U.S., not just the rocket scientists, but also different security people. And he even tried to get Goering out during the Nuremberg trials. So what you have is also now they're citing Elon Musk as coming from Bern, Switzerland. So Bern, Switzerland is a key to this whole thing, and a lot of light is now being shed on Switzerland. That's interesting to me also, discovering, since we have a castle, the family has a castle still, the Trakl Castle, my mom's maiden name, in Switzerland.
You sometimes in previous interviews have referred to your some connections to your Scottish clan name. Can you explain what that is? What is the Scottish clan name?
Our Scottish clan name is McAllister and is connected to the Andersons group. And when I was recruited on Maui with the Masons, they had a guy in charge named Anderson, who was one of the main guys, and he was connecting with me. And it's like, it's interesting they chose the name in Matrix for two names for Thomas A. As Neo and Thomas A. Anderson. But Anderson is also the name of the Pat Robertson whistleblower that was a pastor that had blown the whistle. And that's why we now know they named him Thomas A. Anderson. But the Scottish clan name seemed to be very important to the Masons. They were very big on me having the Scottish connection with the Scottish rites.
Okay, because your genetic goes back to Switzerland, not Scotland.
Well, it's a mix. We have Scottish and we have Switzerland, but most of my DNA will be coming from Switzerland, and specifically Bern, Switzerland is how far we traced it back. And it's interesting, they're now citing, whether it's true or not, it's been sent to me that they're claiming Elon Musk's relatives, ancestors, left Bern, Switzerland and went over to Philadelphia area. And it's fascinating because my ancestors left Bern, Switzerland and went over to the Philadelphia area at the same time in the 1600s. So you see this parallel formation, whether it's true or not on his aspect of family tracing, it is certainly true on mine. So they're making a parallel, like it's almost like taking your identity as the creator of the Neuralink, which is all published in the Matrix story, The Immortals, and giving it to this man and then claiming his family line's tied with the same tracing of travel back in the same timeline. It's just mind-boggling that they went this far.
We will get to those Neuralink connections as well as other things that were taken from your intellectual property when we go further down the line. Right now, one thing
all coming from the childhood.
One thing we can talk about that it comes from your childhood is if people can imagine that from all that trauma, your mind is kind of a little bit fractured, and your way of thinking and the way you imagine things, as you described earlier, has to be different. And so you used to build scenarios by opening windows within your mind. So you pitched this story to Hollywood as a operating system for the computer, right?
Yes, I pitched it as that, and also what I called layered thinking, where the cognitive would be enhanced. I called it the neuroenhancer. That's why they first called it the neuroenhancer before they gave it to Elon Musk, which they changed the neuronal link. Paramount changed it, not him. But enhancer, to enhance our cognitive abilities, where we'd be able to navigate all these different things, where everything would be instant recall and nothing would be forgotten. The thing with layered thinking is you have to be able to remember all these things at once. Most people can't do that. And I think, as you said, fractured led to multi-layered capacities to conceive and cognify.
And that's before Microsoft and
Yes,
Apple
yes,
came out with the Windows type
yes,
user
yes.
interface for the computers.
When I was at Millersville, yeah, exactly. When I was at Millersville University in 1980, the spring of 1980, it's on my transcript. I was given a class in computer and never attended any of the classes. And so didn't want to be there. My brother and my dad made me go to this podunk school where I wanted to go to Villanova. And my brother got to say, no, he's not going. So I'm there. So I'm basically rebelling. And finally, I'm like, I'm not going to take this class. So I go in the last day, and maybe it was just like a compulsion to let the professors know I'm not stupid. But I go in, and there's 3 adjunct professors or visiting professors from California that are doing this 1980 computer class. And it was that's why the green scrolling blips, I put them in this original story that Warner Bros. Got so excited about, is because I was so sick of those green scrolling blips on the DOS program. It was so simple and so stupid, I thought. And so I went in and I talked to the professors, and the first thing out of their mouth, the one head guy, was, you haven't attended any classes. You're going to fail. There's no way. So why are you here? I said, well, I have an idea I wanted to share with you, and I'll go. So I talked about Windows. I talked about having, this is 1980, I talked about having where you can expound from a central learning center, which would go out at different locations, and you could learn from your home and have more time with your family and friends, more social life, more family time, because you'd be learning in your own home. And this would trace out from the central area, so schools would become obsolete. And you would also have your computer screen with a favorite color. It can do movies, phones, all this. This is 1980. And I said you could open a window on a certain topic to expound further. And if you want to expound further, you open another window. I used window. So those professors went back, I'm told, and there it went to Apple, and there it went to Steve Jobs and also Bill Gates. And they fought over who stole it. And Bill Gates says still that he borrowed certain things. Windows was taken from me. So when you look at this, Windows was a natural foundation block for Matrix later. So obviously the author is going to start creating in a synced order different inventions and different storylines that are going to build on the other. That's natural. That's why copyright law is set in place, that a copyright is supposed to be for a certain period of time, so the original creator can come up with a full flowering of the idea, and then it's released to others. Disney broke that mold by not letting Mickey Mouse out of their realm. They got control of the copyright system. That's why Michael Eisner and the rest became kings of the copyright theft and strategy. But to the childhood thing, to the place where I was at the school, yes, I pitched Windows. So Steve Jobs and Bill Gates took it. They knew I'd be shut down. And to this day, Microsoft will not return my calls at all, even if they don't even know why I'm calling.
Interesting. So we are at the point where you, through some very horrific experiences in your early childhood, developed the mindset and the tools inside your brain and cognitive faculties and neural synapses necessary to get to the right frame of mind to be able to not just put this story together, but come up with all of these that new things that are influencing society to this day. Then
Absolutely.
you go to college, right? Then you have an arranged marriage, don't you?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
how does that come about?
Well, that is, the parents insisted, no, demanded that I marry this individual who oh my gosh, I couldn't stand her personality. I couldn't stand the look. I couldn't stand anything about her. And she was promised me by my parents because my brother said that I should marry her because she was the best friend and roommate of his wife to be. And so he wanted to and he said, like, I'm going to marry the prettier one. He was trying to have control of my education and also who I'm with, because he was insanely jealous at a very young age. And it was like, it just never shook. In fact, my sister told me later that he would curl up in a ball if I ever succeeded. He wouldn't be able to handle it. Always this competition, like the bad seed. So that's what led to him helping have the parents arrange this marriage, where I cried at the wedding. It was like I didn't want to be with her. But I was told that if I was not with her, I would lose everything. I wouldn't be allowed to use the car. I wouldn't be allowed to go anywhere I wanted. I would have all my inheritance taken away unless I married this Nancy States. Oh, so I had no choice.
And
I had no choice whatsoever.
you were together with her for 7 years?
About 10 or so. And it was like, she's the one that they also set up where I'd have to go to Pat Robertson's organization. She was a big Pat Robertson fan, and she was employed while I was there to make sure I lost my education and everything else. She worked with them. So it's like a honey pot, but not a honey. It was more like a trash pot.
And so you ended up having intimate contact with her about 7 times, you say, during your whole
During those
10-year
10 or 11 years, yeah, there
marriage?
was about 7 times, because the only time we had any intimate contact, I mean, oh my God, was when we were talking about conceiving a child. I thought, well, if I'm stuck with her, we can have a child. Maybe I can help the child and the child have a good life if this is the only option I have. So as Machiavelli as it sounds, I did have the children with her, but I thought I had no options as a Christian boy. That was it. This is my life.
And you had
And
3 or
so
4?
3 with her. And it was like she flunked out of her schooling at Messiah College. She flunked out of Einstein Medical Center. She flirted with even busboys. It was just a nightmare being with her. And so what happened was I tried to help her get through the school. I actually helped her cheat on tests so she can get her degree. It was terrible what I was sunken into. And but never appreciated anything I did. Always, always nasty, even to this day. So that's why it was easy to replace her later. When I got away from her, they brought another honeypot in, and that's whom Aiden's mom is, who won't have anything to do with him. So it was this game of controlling who's in your life, like Total Recall. It was exactly how they play.
And
And
this other girl that I've heard you speak about in the past, Otika Ball, was that during that
right,
time or after?
Tika balls intermittently. So what you have is when this Nancy States, after I'm thrown, lost everything at Robertson's organization. After they threw everything, and she signed me out without my permission, signed me off. Um, Otika Ball comes on the scene, and she's David Bourne's niece, this lead Democrat senator at the time. And she said she would help me since Nancy States had given me a letter she wrote herself saying, throwing me out. Now that my jobs are taken, my education's taken, she was throwing me out until I make more money. And Otika Ball appeared on the scene and took me in. And that's how I was able to write the screenplay, while Otika Ball, since I had lost everything, she made sure I had the ability to write it. And that was my job with her, was to write the piece. So she really is the reason The Matrix was written.
Right. So we've probably jumped a little bit too far forward because we haven't analyzed how you ended up in Pat Robertson's organization to begin with, and what happened
Right.
during your time there.
No problem. 2 things happened that specifically stand out. One was my parents told me I'd be going there, to the Evangelical University. And I tried to justify it as, okay, well, maybe it'll be a good place to study. Then I got a call when I was in Altoona, Pennsylvania. I got a call from Bob Slosser, who was the president of CBN University at the time. He calls me up and tells me, "You're coming here. You're supposed to come here. God wants you here. You have to come here." Being who I was, with everything basically being taken away in a terrible situation with this Nancy States, who didn't even love our kids, I thought, well, I'll take this option. Okay, my parents will allow it. I'll go. Very controlled, very military family. So I went and was a good soldier and went to CBN, Pat Robertson's organization.
Right. And for those of our viewers that don't know, Pat Robertson did run for president in 1989, and he asked Tom Holthouse
1988.
to be his right-hand man.
Right, 1988. Yes, and it was a school where there was a 50% attrition rate. 50%, they said, of the students never even graduated. They couldn't handle it. But there I was with straight A's, basically. And so doing with those ideas and doing programs, news site, other programs, I was quickly spotted. And I was told Pat Robertson had a position called the face of the Christian Coalition. I'd be the face of the Christian Coalition to help him with his political aspirations to become president when he's running in 1988. And so I would be told that I would be on 700 Club right by his side as his number one man. What they didn't tell me was what the sex ring was operating, and Pat Robertson had selected me as his boy.
Right. And then you end up having a few very unfortunate episodes where you are essayed and
Right. Right.
roofied, and then you
Not,
try
yeah.
to get people to see this side of the organization, and he blames you for denouncing these things. He blames
He
you
blamed, yeah, for the
for
loss of his presidential campaign. He
right,
blames me. He says God said he would win, and that I am the one that went against God. I'm evil. I caused him to lose. But he's basing that on that I got sexually roofied and approached by his associate dean of communications in his own motorhome on a trip. So I don't think I'm the one guilty of him losing his presidential campaign when I'm the victim of the assault. So rather than
absolutely.
blame Harry Sova, they're blaming me. And so Dr.
All
Sova actually
evil
got involved.
ones project.
Right. Right. You're right. And Dr. Sova actually had picked me to be his grad assistant and take me on these motorhome trips because he said Pat Robertson wanted me. So he was, and he said this other Catholic priest, a former Catholic priest named Bob Scheel, he said he was wanting you, that you were going to be his boy in the sex ring. When it was explained to me, I was absolutely blown away that different professors were allowed to pick different young men or women and have them as their personal sex slaves, basically, with the idea that you're working for me. And if you want to continue your jobs and have any kind of advancement, you need to give me what I want. Because, quote, Harry Sova said, he's so lonely. And his wife understands this. And the sex ring is rampant. And that's when he let me know about Paul Anderson or David Anderson, Kensal Presbyterian Church, having come forward and confessed to the congregation, 2,000 strong, that he had had sexual relations with Pat Robertson and the president of his school at that time. That's huge. So that was the last thing he gave me to try to make me go along with it before I was roofied. When I said I didn't want it, I said I'm not this way. I said this is not my problem. Women is my problem, not men. And he got very angry, and that's when I was roofied. After that,
And
he's going to have his way no matter what.
what location did this happen in?
Cherry Hill Camp or Trailer Park, which is out inside D.C., Washington D.C. He took me there, saying we'd be doing research at the Library of Congress. It's very close to the Library of Congress. If you look it up, Cherry Hill Trailer Park. That's where he took me, so he could do his predator stuff right there, isolated. Now there was a letter written to him that was also a letter written to me at a meeting, a president's meeting that I was called into. I had not reported on Harry Sova. I was trying to be the good Christian, say, oh, I'll try to get him some help. I was called into a meeting, and they wanted to know everything he had said to me and what had happened. So they started very nasty by saying, you need your wife here to hold your hand. They didn't want any witnesses. So I go in there. They asked me questions. They had the wife leave. They asked me questions. Whenever I talked about what he said about Pat Robertson's organization, like the Kensal Presbyterian Church reveal with David Anderson, the pen never moved. I'm sorry, no, the pen moved. They wrote that down. They wrote that in detail. They never wrote anything down, I noticed, when I talked about the sexual assault. And I had started with, I don't want anything to happen to this man. I just wanted to get him some help. That was what I sincerely felt. Then they told me that I could keep my jobs, my education. The one guy didn't like the president saying that to me, this Bob Slosser, the same one that recruited me. I left that room, and then I found out later there were men waiting in the adjacent room listening in to come in and craft these two letters. One was to me, and one was to Harry Sova. The Harry Sova letter I was never supposed to see, but I have it for you. And in it, it says that he was wrong for being a repeat offender, for buying the alcohol, for talking about homosexuality, for all that stuff. He was a repeat offender, and that he needs to get counseling and not to keep spreading it. It will do more harm. To me, it said it never happened, that I made it all up, never happened, that my jobs were terminated, my education terminated, basically, in very careful language, that the one attorney guy that was there said to me that it was, that I know what it means, that it's over. You know what it means. Everything's done. And then when I asked about when would I have my education restored to continue get my master's, all I had was my comp and orals to go for my master's degree with straight A's, basically. And they said, I said, what is these sessions supposed to be? They wouldn't answer. They wouldn't set them up. So finally I said, since I'm not getting a call back, I'm going to go ahead and register. Then I got a call right away. And the one guy that was in the meeting named Heinz Schonoff, who was an ex-Nazi, was there, didn't even have his green card, had the voice and everything. Robertson recruited Nazis, is telling me um, sessions will be for your obedience and punctuality. They knew that I was telling the truth. And Pat Robertson was spreading the attorney said, through a chain of command from Pat Robertson at the top, he was spreading that I was crazy and dangerous with a gun. And that was spread everywhere. So that anybody, any job, any love interest would be contacted, still to this day. And they even hired a psychiatrist with a letter of instruction by Robertson and his firm to see if he could find me in layman's terms crazy and dangerous with a gun and apparently schizophrenic. And why he was saying that, why he gave a letter of instruction and paid this doctor to write this, is because his people were already spreading around what he told them to do. So Pat Robertson thought he could make it legal by hiring a doctor and paying them with instructions in a letter to say, find him this way, these exact words that I told people to say, so we can make the slander legal. And that's been used to this day, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
Very effective.
And then later, you end up in Maui, Hawaii. How's that happen?
I was offered by a very top musician and his partner, homosexual partner, Fred, Kaylee Rochelle. Kaylee Rochelle was a top artist in Hawaii, very, very popular artist. They invited me out to Hawaii. I came off the plane after I was with the Rockefeller Group, from Robertson's group to the Rockefeller Group, all in the same area in Colonial Williamsburg. They're very interconnected. I was sent to Hawaii to Kaylee Rochelle.
Before we get too far along, how did you get to the Rockefeller Group?
I was recruited there too. So when I'm bounced out of Robertson's organization, lost everything, the Rockefeller Group, Colonial Williamsburg, David Rockefeller, offered me an audition and hired me on the spot and gave me a good life for about 5 years, where I was there with Otika and other housemates. I got to have like a vice president's house and everything. So they set me up while my work was in Warner Brothers' hands. So this is what we learn now, is it's a grooming process where you're held and treated well, so you're not paying attention to what's happening to your screenplay or what the plans are. Once they make the film, the rug is pulled, you lose everything.
So by the time you get to the Rockefeller Group that you are mentioning now, had you already pitched the Matrix story to Bonaventura?
That's a great question. Yes, in 1993, I pitched it to Bonaventura through Lenny Coco, who's on tape saying, "Yeah, you're at my house doing this. It's brilliant tape." So in 93, that happens. In 93, my case is thrown. In 93, the Rockefellers recruit me, and then I'm tossed out of my ear when it's given to the Wachowskis in 95, 96. The Rockefellers dump me. So it's like they were holding it in tandem by treating me like a king. So those were good years while I was being spoiled. And then what they did was they handed me off to Disney, because Disney had all the locations on Maui. And so I didn't realize the connections with Kaylee Rochelle and Disney. But what happened was I was recruited, and the first thing that happened to me off the plane in Maui, when Kaylee Rochelle and his partner Fred met me, his love interest, they I remember saying, lose the tie. They took me to dinner at a very exclusive restaurant. They set me up at the bed and breakfast, the exclusive one in Wailuku, in the Bird of Paradise room. And it's like they gave me a Jeep to rent and use. They paid for it. They said they just want to see you successful here like we were. And next thing, I'm hired by the EAL Theater. And the Disney group is doing an audition there. And the one director with the Disney group is auditioning me. They give me a lead. They give me a job. They set me up because Disney wasn't done yet. They gave the work to Wachowskis in 95, 96. But now that the work has been stolen in 1999, they take me on in 2001 and keep me from noticing the statute of limitations on claiming order by just spoiling me on Maui. As soon as the statute of limitations is going to run, they dump me too, and I lose everything.
And while you're in Maui, this is when you get approached by what they wanted to be your CIA handler.
That's right. The interesting thing about the story is that the attorney they would provide me, Tony Rankin of Maui, had a suspended license. He was working with his classmates from University of Berkeley that worked with Disney and Warner Brothers. And so he was housing my future honeypot wife. Without me knowing it, she was doing sex for trade with him so she would get housing before she got with me. And that she was put in place by Mike Lang at Disney, because she went back to Mike Lang on my birthday when everything was thrown in 2016, same time George Michael was murdered. Jumping ahead for a second, she was then brought back on my birthday with all these emails from Mike Lang at Disney. But what's interesting is prior, she's put in place from Modesto, California, warrants on her, had been an ex-con in jail, prostitution, breaking and entering, all this other stuff, and approaches me in my improv group and everything else, comes to me and gets connected with me, says she would marry me, all this other stuff. Suddenly I'm in her control, and she's the one that made sure I saw the images that proved my work was taken online and pretended she was going to help me. And she's the one that took me to Tony Rankin, who had been her former landlord, that we could have him. He solicited me to be his attorney with all these promises too. So it was all a setup where they knew exactly how to play me, where first your honeypot gains your trust. And I didn't realize she was having all these affairs on the side at the same time. She let me know that after Mike Lang called her back in 2016 on my birthday. She let me know that she had multiple affairs all the time.
Uh-huh. But going back to this, what was his name? The guy that approached you that was from the CIA? Lauren.
Oh, the guy that approached the CIA?
Holberg?
Lauren Holmberg. Yes, Lauren Holmberg and the Masons on Maui. He used the plural term when he came out to me. He said, like, we are fascinated by your story. This is before the case was thrown. We're fascinated by your story. We want to know more, blah, blah, blah. And he told me that he would be the one handling or representing me, and that I would learn information that would blow my mind away, that he'd make sure that I would be succeeding, and that told me stories also, I guess, to test me. And there was a friend of his who was also in the CIA named Paul in the Masons, who came up to the table too to sit with us. And they're both acting like they're very interested in what I have to share. And they were talking about exploits in the CIA, where it was exports and imports in Africa for Lauren Holmberg. He talked about how he can't wait to make his book, that he was involved in dignitaries' wives, having sex with them, and how he saw piles of arms and legs in Africa, how he had all these connections. And he said, just don't try to make a difference. You know, your life's over as you know it. You're going to be very successful now. We'll be there for you. Just don't try to make a difference, which meant don't try to help the general public. They spelled that right out. He told me 9/11 was a setup by the CIA and FBI, that they had done that. They're amazed the public believes the pancake theory. He was sharing this stuff. They share what they feel they can share in order to bring you in and see how you react. Then Paul chimed in, his friend who was also in the CIA. They said there's 12 families on Maui that were CIA. And that was told to me by a guy that afterwards came up to me when I was lifeguarding. Just this guy, well-dressed, came up and said he was a rock star in Europe at one time. He said, there's 12 families. We're there for you now. Approached me when I was lifeguarding. So they're appearing and appearing and appearing. Lauren Holmberg had me come to his home. He did my birthday party where he gave me an etching and a chessboard made of animal fur from African. An African chief made it. He gave me that as a gift. Grooming. And Paul had shared something chilling too. Again, to hammer home, I now get it, to hammer home the idea of don't try to make a difference for the general public. He shared a story from Oakland, California, and he said that he was on assignment. They had a blind set up on the street section from an abandoned building thing. And they witnessed a young couple being murdered by this one African-American target. And he sent in the word, do we get involved? And he was told, no, don't get involved in any way. Don't help them. He watched this young people be murdered to death. And then the guy who was the target came up to the blind and talked to him. He knew they were there. And so he's making the point that they were told not to help the general public, even a young couple, and gave that example in Oakland. That was supposed to rub it home that I was not supposed to help the general public. And if you do, you'll be like them. So it was very graphic.
And when they had this talk with you, admitting that there was CIA and FBI involvement in 9/11, did they admit anything about Mossad involvement as well?
They didn't talk about Mossad at that time. They were strictly focused on their agencies. It's a good question, but they did not address that. I guess they figured it's the idea of just share enough. But me hearing about the pancake theory, they couldn't believe the public believed it. that's to make me believe the public's dumb. I get that, because I said I was writing for audiences because I wanted to believe they were smart. And also, like, now it's making sense why they said what they said, and just what they said, would hammer home enough. So, yeah.
Did you believe the official narrative at the time?
No, I didn't. That's why also when I wrote the Matrix story, The Immortals, I put in the false flag 9/11. It's in there. That's why the Wachowskis, I'm told, put in 9/11 on Neo's passport, because I had put it in my work, Whispering Through Art, that it was going to occur from what I learned at Pat Robertson's organization.
Okay. You knew there was going to be that false flag so you wrote the script in the late 80s, early 90s, but you knew there was going to be that particular false flag in 2001.
No, I knew there was going to be a false flag. I didn't know what it would be. So in my screenplay, I have it as a hospital going up. And that's a good thing you asked that, because they then put that in Dark Knight with Christopher Nolan, who's been a real nemesis of mine, stealing all kinds of scenes. He put in Dark Knight the hospital blowing up. So he used up that and put it in there. It was very hurtful, because I didn't know it would be the buildings. I thought it would be a hospital. I surmised that maybe it's a hospital where they can get the biggest emotional effect. But they went for 9/11, the towers.
Do you know why they perpetrate false flags in 9/11? They tried to create horror on Earth on that particular date?
Well, to take away our rights. Really, one of the big things they want to do is create fear and create a endless enemy. What Robertson talked about.
Why that particular date? 9/11.
Well,
there's a researcher.
It's an emergency phone call. It's an emergency phone call. You dial 9/11 when you're in trouble and peril. It's a joke.
Okay, because there is a researcher who researched for 12 years all of the scriptures, went to the Holy Lands, and he believes that's the actual date that Jesus Christ was born in. And so,
I wouldn't negate anything. I just know that 9/11 is the number you call when you need help.
But they could be
it's a joke.
Creating all of this terror on 9/11, because we know everything on Earth is energy. So they're trying to counteract the positive and divine energy that was opened up as a portal when the Messiah, and in the form of Yeshua ben Joseph, Jesus Christ, came in. He must have obviously he created very positive influence, and the evil ones are trying to counteract that by creating loosh for people.
Well, you just hit something very important for me, because I often wondered why they picked the Wachowskis that failed. Keanu Reeves, they were saving his career, the suits said at Warner Brothers, because he had just done Johnny Lightning. They're going to save a failed actor at that point in their mind. Both Elon Musk had failed as an engineer. He had almost gone bankrupt, and they saved him. So they're using failed people all the time. And why Sova was allowed to get away with he went with when he's a pedophile and also sexual predator, repeat offender. Sova's situation was he liked to dirty the pure. That's what I picked up from him, is if you're pure and innocent, they want to be the first to dirty you. And that's exciting to them and stimulating. So the cabal has a segment of society that's very willing to do what they want in this horrible stuff for their gains, because they enjoy dirtying what is pure and good. It's hard to find people that would want to do that, destroy a Neo. But it just made sense to me what you just shared. But
that's why they're constantly looking to corrupt the innocence of children. That's exactly.
And the ones that'll be motivated to do it. Yeah, the ones that'll be motivated to do it will be these type of characters, like the Wachowskis, Dr. Sova, who's now at Liberty University in the communications department.
Yeah,
these
the morally corrupt, of course.
Yeah, the ones that get off on that. So that's why they are able to employ them, like my brother Jack. Yeah.
Okay, so going back to this timeline where you were in Maui, how did they try to recruit you into Freemasonry? And with that, we bring our first episode to an end. Please like and subscribe to maximize your chances of being notified for our upcoming episodes in this multi-part series. In the next episode, we'll find out how Tom gets recruited into the Freemasons, why he did it, why he even thought that was a good idea to begin with, and how that directly ties into the elimination of his first son, Sean Otthouse.